Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, things get, well, let's just say we're venturing into some truly dark territory. We're headed to New Orleans, the heart of voodoo, vampires, you name it. But we're not here for the ghost stories tourists chase. Right, this one digs deep. This is about Madame Delphine LaLaurie, a name that still sends shivers down spines in New Orleans, and honestly, for good reason.
We're talking newspaper clippings from the 1830s, court documents, property records, the works. Because this isn't just spooky lore. This woman, she lived and breathed and, well, let's just say, the things she's accused of, they make your skin crawl.
What gets me is the contrast. LaLaurie, she wasn't some shadowy figure lurking in the back alleys. She was high society, New Orleans elite, wealth, power, you name it, she had it. And yet,
those whispers, they followed her about what went on behind closed doors in that mansion of hers.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What lurks beneath the surface of respectability? Let's rewind. Back to Delphine's early life. Born Marie Delphine McCarty in 1775. Talk about privilege, we're talking about New Orleans aristocracy, the top of the food chain.
Yeah, her father, he wasn't just some rich guy. We're talking knighted by the Royal and Military Order of St. Louis. Their land holdings, massive. Her mother, famous for throwing parties, the kind that were the talk of the town.
Okay, so we're setting the scene. Power, influence. This wasn't a family used to hearing no.
Exactly. And it's important to remember this is the world of the Deep South, pre-Civil War, and that means one thing, slavery.
Right, woven into the very fabric of their wealth.
The McCarty family, they owned a lot of enslaved people, worked their plantations, kept their lavish lifestyle going. It wasn't theoretical, it was their everyday reality.
A grim reminder of how deeply ingrained it was in that society.
Now, Delphine, she was married 3 times. Each husband, a whole other story. First up, Don Ramon de Lopez y Angulo, Spanish official. Oh, this guy's interesting. He defied Spain's orders. Directly, I might add. Allowed the importation of enslaved people straight from Africa.
Bold move. What happened?
Reassign. And tragically died on the way back to Delphine.
Wow. So defying those orders, that was no small thing.
Let's just say colonial power dynamics.
Yeah.
Messy. But his actions, they mattered. Directly fueled the expanding slave trade in Louisiana.
Heavy stuff. And husband number 2.
Jean Blanc, businessman. A past as colorful as a pirate's treasure map.
Ooh, intrigue?
But his real legacy, debt, mountains of it, left Delphine to clean up after he died.
So she had to be shrewd, had to know how to work the system.
Oh, absolutely. Sharp as a tack, that one. This ability to manipulate, it's a theme, trust me. But then, husband number 3, this is where it gets really dark. Dr. Louis LaLaurie.
And this is where those whispers about how she treated the people she enslaved, they start to, I don't know, they get louder, more frequent?
Louder and a lot more disturbing. So it's 1834, New Orleans, and the LaLaurie mansion, engulfed in flames.
I can only imagine. A mansion fire back then.
Yeah.
Talk about panic.
Yeah, total chaos. People rushed to help, obviously. But when they got inside, this wasn't putting out a fire. This was, well, let's just say what they found. It wasn't pretty.
This is where the historical record, the newspapers, the court documents, they paint a pretty horrific picture.
Enslaved people, chained, some bound, showing signs of, well, it's tough to even talk about, honestly. Torture, the worst kind. And it wasn't just 1 or 2. This was a whole group of people subjected to. God, it's awful.
Yeah, I've seen some of the descriptions. It's hard to even imagine what those rescuers must have walked into.
One of the first there, Judge Jean-François Canoche, he described finding an old woman, I think she was 70, chained to the stove, badly burned, barely alive.
Oh my God.
She'd started the fire herself, trying to escape, you know?
Desperation like you can't even imagine.
And it gets worse. There were others. Up in the attic, they found them. Imprisoned. Witnesses. They used the words horribly mutilated. Some in chains, twisted in these weird positions. Others, wounds, infections, clearly hadn't received any kind of medical care.
Just left to suffer.
One woman, she had this iron collar, heavy, riveted around her neck. Can you imagine the constant pain?
It's just unimaginable. We have to remember, these details, as awful as they are, this isn't some ghost story, right? This is documented evidence, court record.
Exactly. Now, you'll hear even crazier stories, I'm sure. People with holes drilled in their skulls, that kind of thing.
That sounds more like Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess, centuries earlier.
Exactly. It shows you how those dark stories, they get mixed up, especially in a place like New Orleans. But trust me, even without the embellishments, the LaLaurie case, more than horrific enough.
It makes you wonder, how? How could someone even do those things? What kind of person?
And that's the thing. Delphine, she wasn't some outcast, some monster hiding in the shadows. We're talking about a woman who hosted dinners, parties, the who's who of New Orleans society.
That contrast, right? That she was living this life of luxury while behind the scenes.
Chilling. And the reaction, well, when the news broke, let's just say people were furious.
Understatement, I bet.
A mob descended on the mansion, tore the place apart, destroyed everything they could get their hands on.
Looking for justice.
Or maybe just way to unleash that rage, that horror. I don't know.
What about Delphine, Madame LaLaurie? Did she face any consequences? Did they catch her?
That's where the story takes another turn. See, while that mob was tearing her house apart, Delphine LaLaurie vanished. Gone.
Proof. Gone. Just like that. Well, the city's practically on fire around her. It's like something out of a movie, you know?
It really is. But that escape, think about it. Even with everything exposed, she still had that power, the connections, the wealth. It was like a shield.
Protected her. Even then. Makes you think, how many other times did that happen back then? How much was swept under the rug because of who you were, who you knew?
Exactly. But LaLaurie, her story doesn't end there. There are sightings, rumors. She ends up in France, apparently. There's even an account, get this, of her on a hunting trip with the American poet William Cullen Bryant.
Wait, hold on. From torturing people to hunting trips with poets.
The world worked differently then. Let's just say money talked.
I guess so. It's hard to stomach, you know? Like she just got away with it.
It happens even today, right? The powerful, they have a way of escaping consequences. But LaLaurie, she died in Paris, 1849. Details are sketchy, of course.
But naturally. Wouldn't be her style to go out with a whimper, I guess.
Yeah.
But that mansion of hers in New Orleans, that's a whole other story, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. People still talk about it today, but not about the architecture or the history. You know, that's what happened there, those stories.
The darkness. It's like it seeped into the walls, the very foundation.
You could say that. The LaLaurie mansion, it's more than bricks and mortar. It's a reminder of the horrors of slavery, for sure, but also how easily power can corrupt, how easily people can be exploited, abused. It's a chilling story, but important. We can't forget these things.
No, we can't, because it's those whispers, those stories that keep us asking questions, keep us vigilant, right?
Exactly. Sometimes the scariest monsters, they're not the ones in the ghost stories. They're real. They're human.
And that's a chilling thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the dark heart of New Orleans. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep listening.